And we're going. Alright. Well, welcome. This is the, I guess, the inaugural session of what we're going to be calling Composer Talk. And basically, what we're hoping it's going to be is just kind of a platform to discuss topics relevant to new music, to creating new music, to writing it, to performing it, and just composition-related topics and news because, well, there's a lot of sparse places to find the information, and my colleague and I have decided, well, it'd be nice if there were one place to kind of go for it, even if just for our own minds, so that we know where to look in the future. So without further ado, my colleague here will introduce himself.
I am Jacob Frost. I am a master's student at the University of Oklahoma and a graduate assistant in the composition area there, as is my colleague. I am, I said, studying composition at, I just started here at OU. I've been here for about a couple months working in the master's program. At my previous school, I was active in the new music program there, and in the music program in general, trying to bring music to the community and make it and bring it to campus of Drury University, where I did my undergrad, and help the music department in its dissemination of new music, in its keeping facilities, that sort of thing. Like I said, I've just started here at the University of Oklahoma. My colleague here will introduce himself. He's been here for a little longer than me.
Yeah, I've been here for quite a lot of time. This is my 4th year here at the University of Oklahoma. I actually overlapped with him a little bit. I was undergraduate. I was leaving right as he was coming in, thank goodness. But no offense. No, I did a lot of the same stuff in undergrad. I formed a new music advocacy group. I kind of spearheaded the composers' concerts there my last several years, which I'm sure my composition professor was very grateful for. And then since I got here, I've pretty much just been system building. I've been building systems and programs for composers to not just share their music with the public, but to share it with each other. I've started a couple workshops. I've helped with a couple of conferences. I've tried to dive into about every realm of new music possible. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just weird because I like doing everything from, I've done some electronics to I enjoy experimenting like Cage, and, I'm doing a weird piece about constructing a cello next.
Piece for Dice.
A piece for Dice more recently. Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm going to try and get that streamed on my personal channel here very soon. Nocturne for Dice. But yeah, I care a lot about new music, and I care a lot about the community of new music because, well, it's a fun community, and sometimes we just don't take advantage of it. Even we're guilty of that sometimes. And, well, this is our attempt to kind of reach out and let not just ourselves, but everyone else know that, well, you're not alone, and, well, hopefully you'll be able to learn something, and hopefully we'll be able to learn a bit by kind of taking all this information and distilling it for you. But, I hope that I can be of assistance, and I hope that we can try and be as useful as possible, because between us, we've done enough in new music, and we both have kind of the same mindset with system building that, well, we're kind of hoping that we can establish a conversation with you guys.
And in addition to news and new things happening in contemporary music, we also want to talk about kind of the issues that face contemporary composers today. There's a couple things we have on the queue for today that we'll get into, but I think first we wanted to bring up the latest news item, which is, I believe, the Kusevitsky Foundation just announced
Kusevitsky. That was funny. I liked that.
This will probably be a running problem if you've ever heard me pronounce names before.
Right. Well, worse things have happened. Well, let's go ahead and pull this up. I saw this come up on, I think actually Facebook of all places. Someone brought it up to me that hey, the Kusavitsky Foundation they announced who won, and it's one of those things that I mean, it's not really that well advertised if you think about it to the common public.
Most
I mean,
things in contemporary music aren't.
it isn't, but especially, but even to us, like for instance, like you don't see this stuff on like the composer's site or SCI and all that, because it's that next level.
I mean, I hadn't heard about it until you. Did this come out this morning?
No, this came out last week at some point,
Oh.
I believe. Yeah, see, this is why this is a problem. Yeah, it came out on the 18th, 7 days ago. So, yeah, this is part of the problem.
By the time
I'm
here.
pretty well networked in the music community, and didn't quite know that. So, my embarrassment aside, let's run through this. There were 6 winners for the Kusavitsky Commission Foundation event, and the first one, Jerome Comier, that's actually a name that I've run into a few times. He's in France. He directs the Ensemble Cairn, and he's kind of a big deal in Europe. I've run across his name just while doing some research into contemporary music. Because again, I'm bored sometimes and I just research random things.
We have George Friedrich Haas. He is a professor at Columbia University. He seems. I know I haven't run across a lot of these people on this list, but this is a name I've heard several times. It's not. I'm not particularly familiar with his music. It seems to me that he's one of the more high-profile things on the people on the list. Although I'm not particularly familiar with his actual work.
Well,
but
for me, it rings a bell. I think he's done some percussion stuff. That now I'm thinking about it. I believe I was recommended to look at some of his percussion music while I was writing a percussion piece of my own.
I seem to have heard the name in choral context, although I think that might be someone different, and I'm getting them mixed up.
It's entirely possible. But he's a bright guy. Columbia University and whatnot. He's a professor there. I mean, you don't get there just by rolling dice like I do. Next person on the list is Yotam Haber, born in Holland and is a United States and Israeli citizen, of all things. And he actually, he's been awarded 2 ASCAP Foundation Morton Gold Awards. That's actually... I haven't heard this name before, but now I'm curious more, because to win a prestigious contest like that twice in a row, you kind of got to have something. So a lot of times, I mean, I know I've seen this happen, someone will win something once or twice, and then it's just like, oh, well, we're just not going to pay attention to you anymore. But he's written something pretty good, apparently, that he's able to win these things multiple times. So props to him, and congrats on that.
We also have, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Juri Seo. He looks to be a composer and an actor. She. Oh, okay. I'm having a hard time reading the screen. So we do. I was actually kind of looking for gender diversity in here, and I guess she seems to be the only woman in the lineup of 6. I don't. Yeah. He looks like everyone else. Yes, a performer and a composer, professor at Princeton.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of that, that's actually something. I'll get into that here in a second. But the next name on the list, Diego Alberto Tedesco. This is a name I've actually heard a little bit. I've heard him mentioned by a couple of my colleagues, and honestly, he's kind of been on my to-do list because apparently there's a concerto I need to listen to that he's been involved in. But shame on me for not doing that yet. I'll get to that at some point. But he's gotten Argentina's highest arts recognition. He also, he is writing a new chamber work for Plural Ensemble of Madrid. So that's a really good ensemble, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a couple of their recordings, and definitely not bad.
And the last person on the list, Ricardo Zone Muldoon. A Mexican composer a Mexican-American composer who teaches at Eastman, and looks like he's had fellowships from Tanglewood and other prestigious institutions. So a rather prestigious lineup we have here.
Tanglewood. Man,
T-
yeah.
A fellowship from yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And Guggenheim
And yeah.
wow. This guy. That's a pretty good spread.
And this is also someone I haven't heard of, which is we are spreading the awareness about new music, but I'm also spreading the awareness to myself, because these are composers who I am probably going to be checking out in the coming weeks. Looking at
no reason not to. Maybe you should do that this afternoon. What are you doing this afternoon?
Composing.
Someone else is calling. Come on. We just went over this. No, but well, on the topic that you mentioned in these Kusvitsky, well, first of all, bravo to everyone who was awarded that. That's one of the more prestigious ones out there. But the gender diversity thing you mentioned, this actually is something that was brought up recently at SCI.
I saw that thread.
Someone, I won't go into names, but someone did mention, I'm worried about, gender diversity. It seems that, there were no women that were represented on this latest album from SCI. And I believe the reaction basically was, actually, we had, half women judges. So it was pretty objective, and it's blind, so...
Which, from a certain perspective, doesn't... having women on the adjudicatory board doesn't necessarily exempt you from accusations of sexism, because as sociologists will tell us, gender norms and patriarchal norms tend to permeate the way all of us think, not just men, but also women. But it was a blind competition, and I think there's a tough balance to be had, because collecting my thoughts, when in any given competition, from a purely probabilistic standpoint, if you have 3 or 4 winners, it's not unlikely that all of them would be of one gender or one race, or it's in many ways it's not completely subjective, but as far as just who happens to submit, who the judges happen to be, it's not implausible that a competition could be won by 3 winners, could be all men or all women. But at the same time, representation has been an issue throughout the history of Western music, and particularly in the 20th and 21st centuries, we've become aware of it more.
Right.
And of course we have competitions that try to remedy that by having a competition specifically for women composers, and that also is controversial in some circles.
I think it is, even honestly, to some women composers. Like we both have a colleague here, Chelsea Williamson. She's a brilliant composer. She writes great band music. I think she's actually focusing on educational band music lately, but she had a teacher at one point, a female teacher, who I believe they both decided that it's like, we really don't want to focus on entering these women's contests, because that just further widens the kind of, I guess, it kind of widens the gap between, we want this to be normal, but we need to, it to be fair, but we also need to include, because at some point, you kind of got to not necessarily drop these women and only competitions, but you kind of got to look at it from the perspective of, is this all women's competition actually, fostering equal representation and equal, I guess, treatment of the composers? Because, if women are given their own concert, why aren't men? That's always my argument. And yes, I know that's very male-heavy industry as it is for composition, but it just begs the question of, are we valuing them less and just kind of giving them their own concert? I personally am not, but just
I definitely would not question the intentions necessarily of the people who put those competitions out there. I think the intention definitely is to create more representation for women composers. But as Zach has said, you don't want to start implying that we have competitions for women composers because we feel like they can't compete on the same level as men, because that's baloney. And I, I I think, as I said before, having more women on adjudication committees does not eliminate the problem of sexism in music. But I think that, personally, I think that is one of the best steps that organizations can take to kind of ameliorate the problem, is to have more women on the adjudication committees who are aware of representation issues, and will hopefully try to pick pieces and pick compositions with an even hand, and hopefully act as a check on, if there are people on the committee who implicitly, or most of the time, have just implicit biases, to act as a check on those biases.
Right.
Right.
Well, I totally agree. And you know, it's, I don't know, it's an interesting issue, and I think the way SCI actually handled it was very good by just responding with, hey, you know, we've got, you know, women on the board that we're deciding, and you know, we feel that, you know, it was blind. Even, I mean, technically, no competition is truly blind. If you really wanted to, you could say it was blind and make it not. But an organization like SCI is always going to be fair. They're always going to try to, I guess, kind of do the right thing, and it's a blind contest. So anybody who kind of accuses them otherwise, which this one wasn't, but you know, some people have in the past, it's a blind contest. I mean, as someone who has sat on the other side, whenever people have sent submissions to OU for inclusion on a program, and I'm sitting there with a bunch of other, you know, grads and professors, and we're sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, and occasionally we've gotten that person that is like, was this blind or not? You know, it really seems like it was biased. It's like, no, just all the composers were from the northern United States this time, and we have no idea why.
I wonder, I haven't looked at this extensively, maybe you have. I wonder if there is literature out there, studies that have been done on competitions across, well, the United States specifically. I mean, we could look at the world, but U.S. culture, it tends to be what we're talking about here mostly, I think, when it comes to sexism in the industry, and if the how much of a disparity there is, both in the number of women who are submitting to competitions versus the number of men, and in the number of women who are winning and being commissioned, and things like this. Because there are a lot of factors besides simple sexism that go into it. I know something that gets brought up a lot, not just in music, in academia and in the industry, but in all fields, is women feeling like they're not welcome in a field because they don't feel represented among the people who tend to be given high priority and accolades in history as well as today. Oh, something that.
Yeah, that's something definitely true. And well, you know, you guys let us know. I mean, you know, is it a problem, and are these kind of the best ways to address it? Because I mean, you know, it's entirely possible that the industry as a whole are just looking at the problem wrong, but who knows? You know, the next thing we've got on the docket, though, is something that you and I were talking about earlier this week, and that is, it's kind of twofold. The first fold of that we'll dive into is kind of the idea of these competitions, and kind of, should I pay $10 to have the privilege of someone else viewing and judging my music, or is it better to kind of do the cold call method? You know, get a hold of a quartet you might know of, or you know, some brass quintet in the area, and just get a hold of them, chat with them, show up with some music, and see if they want to read it. I mean, I personally can say that I don't really like paying money for submitting to competitions. That's my personal thing. But at the same point, you know, I guess I can't really derail the fact that people do want to pay to have the chance at winning a recording and all that stuff.
My approach has typically has typically been, if the competition is free, I will submit something. If the competition is free and if I have something that fits what they're asking for, I won't typically wipe something for a competition. But if it's free, I will submit. If there is an entry fee, I'm going to be a little more selective. I understand the point of entry fees.
Well, I do too.
Sometimes you have to, if your adjudicators are not volunteers, you have to pay them for your time. If you're going to offer a prize, you have to raise enough money to feasibly offer that prize. To me, I think the approach of general networking is something that I think has to be the basis of all of our attempts to put our music out there.
Mm-hmm.
Competitions are important, but as we've talked about, I think they ultimately, however important they are, have to be secondary to your personal networking. But yeah, an entry fee is not necessarily going to put me off completely, but it will make me more selective about what I submit to, as I think for most
that's fair.
Student composers who aren't exactly rolling in money. Right.
Yeah, that GA salary, man, you don't know. We get paid the big bucks, let me tell you. As you look at my crowded little home office studio thing. Don't tell them. But I mean, you do have a point, and like I can't disagree. I mean, if it's something that I'll put it this way: if I already have something, and it's a really good group that I wish I could get my hands on, then I will totally pay that contest fee. But I won't pay a contest fee for, all right, we're wanting people to write music for, didgeridoo and accordion. It's like, well, that's fantastic new music endeavor, and I salute you for it. I have to think about my replayability here.
There is a didgeridoo concerto.
There is.
I believe a living Sean O'Boyle, I think is his name.
I've run across that.
I think I shared it with you a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was whenever you visited during your spring break or something.
I don't remember. I just remember listening to this piece.
I'm remembering that, and I won't say it's a bad piece because it's not, but it'll take you on a journey.
These do exist. But the other thing I'm going to consider, besides whether I have something, is my actual likelihood of winning. Because I think you can write a good piece, a really good piece, that isn't the kind of piece that wins competitions.
Right, and that's something that, and that's something else that I guess is something that deters me slightly from wanting to pay for contests, because you can get a lot further, and I've discussed this with you, and I've even shared my time ratios with you. I mean, most of my commissions I've gotten, and I don't know, I don't get an insane amount, but I get like average of like 3 a year or something like that. I'm not famous or anything, but I get like 3 a year or so on average, and basically whenever I get them, it's with someone that I have a personal relationship with, and it's someone that I can definitely see myself working with again in the future. And oftentimes, if you write for someone on a commission, or you pay them to do something, if you build a good relationship, then they have no problem showing up for you for, oh, I've got this recital coming up and I promised I'd show something, would you mind showing up? Or, hey, there's a benefit concert, and I'd like to do this piece, but I need a pianist, are you interested? So I mean, I don't know, nothing will ever replace the networking, but at the same point, it's just like, is that money that you could put towards a better use? But that's something that I guess is more for you to decide. It's more for you to decide, more for me to decide for myself. And I think it just depends on your situation. Like, for me, I guess I just don't really see the desire to, because I would rather forge a path, so to say, which is why I do so many silly things with my time, like construct cellos for music. It's fun. And that kind of spirals into our next topic, just involving contests and all that stuff. New Music Box. Do you wanna take this one?
Sure. New Music Box, for those of you who may not know, is a prominent website hosted by an organization called New Music USA that's dedicated to the discussion and dissemination of specifically music by contemporary American composers. They operate a online radio station called Counterstream Radio, which is really great. I spent some time listening to that. You hear a lot of...
It's not bad.
Yeah.
I listened to that before I got the classical station here.
Well, but our classical station here doesn't play a lot of new music.
They do on the symphony casts, because they do things like Chicago
Mhm.
Symphony a lot, and
Right.
Chicago Symphony is actually quite good about programming new music.
Yes.
during the
Of course, this isn't irrelevant to our
Right.
viewership. But so they operate the radio station, and they also serve as kind of an information site, so to say, for new music, new pieces that are coming out, new ideas about contemporary music, and also things going on in the industry. You hear a lot about opera there specifically recently, and it's essentially the content you get on there. It's basically a community blog. Contributors come from kind of all walks of life, students, professionals.
That being said, there is a screening process. You can't just post there. You do
Right.
have to go, and you do have to kind of justify that, yes, I'm a person that
Mhm.
exists, and you have to... I've looked at it before. You basically have to prove that you're competent, right?
Not a blog in the sense that anybody can put something on there.
Right.
In the sense that it's very much I don't know what word I'm trying to use.
It's kind of like a moderated. It's kind of like a moderated forum.
Right. It's not like an academic resource.
There we go.
It's an more informal news site, place to talk about ideas, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and I think that has value in itself, but I guess the question, the reason why I listed it, because basically it seems like a feast or famine thing for me. Which, yeah, I mean, it's not every day that you get like breaking news in the world of new music composition. I mean, if it were, then dude, that'd be great. But no, I mean, like for instance, let's just look like. If you look back, I'm just going to scroll through the month of September, and basically there's about an article a week for September. And all of a sudden in October, there's already about 9, and we've still got a full another week.
Right.
So it's a feast or famine type thing, but at the same point, there are useful things. Like, for instance, I'm just looking at this little panel that I've got pulled up here. There's a piece about, algorithmic approaches to harmony orchestration and more, which actually that's something I read, and I actually agree with most of it. It's stuff that if you do any, digital sound production work,
Mhm.
then you'll kind of get into that, which you'll hopefully do that next year. But, no, and then there's stuff about, the use of delays and feedback and all that as a form of making music. Is it musical? Is it not? There's a bunch of stuff like that, and I guess the real question is, since it isn't an academic source, is it still a worthwhile read? Like, should you make it a priority to, all right, new Music Box article, let's go?
I think you have to take the website for what it is. If you expect to be getting an article a day and for everything to be extremely in depth, you're going to be disappointed. For me, I see it as a place to expose myself to new ideas. That then I can go research further if something looks interesting to me. And I'm not expecting them to put up an article a day or 3 articles a week. So I check the site maybe a couple times a week, and tend to catch articles a couple days after they've been put up. If something looks interesting to me, and they have contributors who are talking about. Zach mentioned some of them. There's somebody recently who's been talking about our conception of genre in contemporary music. A recent series of articles about microtonal music, which I think the author called Zen harmonic music.
That's why you got interested in that again. I was wondering what brought that up.
Have I been going on about microtonal music?
No,
recently?
you started mentioning it a few weeks ago again, and you had dropped it for like a whole year. So I'm just sitting there like, oh, maybe he's forgotten it.
The extent of my microtonal compositions has been a few quarter tones for color, but
we're not gonna get into that. But no, but in general, I guess I agree. You kind of got to take it for what's worth. I wouldn't call it a news site. I would call it more like an ideas forum.
For the most part, yes.
Which, you kind of take it for what it's worth, and I guess my end jurisdiction on it is, I don't consider it a priority. If someone links me to it, I will read it, but honestly, unless I'm linked to it, I don't go searching.
I just check it as one of my sites that I periodically go to. Like Arts Journal is another one. That's not music specifically. It's more of a.
It's just about the arts in general.
Right,
I've read some articles.
And it's there's a little bit of original content, but most of it's a kind of a hub to linking to
right, and like literature reviews about it and stuff like that.
I kind of this is kind of horrible. I kind of think of it as the Drudge Report for the arts, not because of actual content, because of how it's structured. Of course, the Drudge Report is its whole other topic that we don't need to get into.
I don't get paid enough for that.
But yeah, no. See, also to me, Counterstream is just great.
That is a really good thing, and I've considered doing a different version of that personally, because I mean, honestly, I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be multiple streaming sources for new music, because there's plenty of great new music being written. And like, for instance, I had suggested, and you know, they're considering this, but one of my buddies from, you know, grad school who's gone off and he's now doing some stuff, he is teaching a string orchestra, and he was talking about how awkward it is to kind of discover string orchestra music, because pretty much the way most orchestra teachers discover it is they play what they played during high school. I mean, that's a big way. And then another way is by going to conferences such as, you know, state music educator conferences, and going to the vendors there and seeing what's been written. That, and, you know, occasionally, you know, Sunhee Newbold will be like, here's 5 new string orchestra pieces because I write that fast because I'm Sunhee Newbold. But, you know, how great would it be to just have a couple streaming sources that you could just, let's say in a few years, you're at let's just say a high school, and you are there teaching as just kind of a temporary gig, but you really want to find some new music for the band to play. Or let's just say the string orchestra, because it's easy to find new band music. But, I mean, how great would it be if you were able to tune into a radio and know, okay, if I tune in for this 3 hours on the radio, I'm going to be presented with like 20 new works for string orchestra for consideration. That would be a really good tool. Even if you're running like a string quartet or something, you could tune in and there could be like a string quartet block. That may be necessary, because some string quartets get a little long, 30 minutes for me. But you know, it'd be great to just kind of have kind of like audio browsing, instead of just, you know, having to go to some publisher website and just scrolling through seeing what's new. I mean, it's a lot more valuable because you can learn a lot more by listening to it, I feel.
There's a few contemporary music radio stations out there. I think
a lot of them are really leaning one way or the other, though.
There was one I just found that I cannot remember the name of it. I think I might have actually found it on the local classical station's website.
Okay.
That programs some syndicated shows from other.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it was something of that sort. But yeah, with a channel dedicated specifically, that's almost like, I almost think of that as something. If we had like something like Sirius XM for classical music, and
I mean, there are several classical stations on there. Like, for instance, my parents even have this at home. My dad, half the time when he's sitting there doing work downstairs, if he's not watching football, he's listening to I think it's the Beethoven, Haydn, Mozart channel on his TV.
Right.
I kid you not, that's a whole channel. And then my mom is typically listening if she's doing housework to the Debussy Ravel Liszt channel. They have sectionalized channels like this in certain venues.
I like 2 of those composers.
I know how you feel about Bolero. Drop it. You haven't had to play.
Ravel wasn't the one I was talking about.
Oh.
No, I like Ravel. I'm just not a big Liszt fan.
Okay,
No.
well, pianist, sorry. I'll send you his home address later. Wait, no, because that's my... No. Send me what you want me to do to him, then I'll take care of it.
What I was thinking is like if you had a website that kind of collated all of the classical or contemporary classical stations into one place. So if there was a string orchestra one, you could go there and it's like, oh, I need to discover some string orchestra music. Here's the string orchestra channel.
That would be cool, and that's something, you know, I won't lie, you know, I've discussed a bit with one of my colleagues, Dr. Vanderberg, and I. We've discussed the use of such a thing, but the big problem is nobody wants anybody accessing their radio streams from anywhere but their homepage.
Right.
And I can totally understand why. It drives traffic, it helps your SEO rankings, but it really does create a problem. And until someone comes up with a good solution to that isn't just a list of links, then unfortunately it's not going to be viable. But, you know, it's something that, you know, I've spitballed with him a bit about, and I think the world is progressing to the point where they want something like that. But I just don't think we're there yet. It's a weird thing. I don't know. We'll move on for now, but, you know, let us know what you think on that, because, I mean, you know, New Music Box, useful, but, you know, is it worth checking out? Or is it just, you know, if they hit a certain trigger word for you, should you go check it out then? I mean, just let us know what you think. All right.
I believe we wanted to talk about notation software. Oh
yes. All right, we did. So, tell me your woes. You've got some woes. I heard some interesting new words coming from your room the other night.
I will not repeat the words I tend to say when I am using Sibelius. But Sibelius.
We'll just call it the purple software.
The purple software.
The purple software. Yeah. We don't want to offend anybody. It could be anything. Purple.
I'm trying to think of other purple softwares now. Anyway. Said purple software. There's a great. We might have to post a link to this into the description later, but there's a great meme going around the internet about pasting tuplets across bar lines in the purple notation software, which you can't do. You see it all the time in Bartok, but you can't do it. Also, you can't copy part of a tuplet, even if you're copying an articulation or a set of articulations. The other day I was doing some edits on an orchestral piece I wrote, and I had made a couple changes to the instrumentation.
Keep going.
I went to the instrumentation page to edit the text, and it would not let me select the text. There was some glitch that when I clicked on the text, it would not select it. I then had to go through a 15-minute process of figuring out how to delete that page so I could create new text. So, yes, there are problems with the purple software. I feel like it's the kind of thing where I hate it, but I love to hate it. And that might sound kind of strange. Did you have that experience with the software, Zach, when you used it, loving to hate all the horrible things about it?
Oh, well, that's how I feel about Cycling 74 Max. Anybody that does electronic music? Yeah.
I've only played around in Max a little bit, but my impression of it is that it's rather.
It's good whenever you know how to use it, but even then it will randomly break. So, long story short, the reason why we want to talk about this is because, well, for me in particular, I'm probably one of the best versed people on the planet in notation software.
You even taught a class on it.
I've taught many classes on it, but you know, I've used the purple software. I've, you know, used the old standard Finale. I've used many versions of this, many versions of Sibelius. You know, I've used MuseScore plenty. In fact, I own a manual on it because
there's a printed manual on MuseScore.
Yeah, mastering MuseScore.
I've never seen this before. Interesting.
It actually answers a lot of questions that the online forums don't.
MuseScore. Every composer likes to joke about how bad MuseScore is, but
at least they have good documentation.
It's actually a very wonderful thing because
it's free, halfway decent notation.
Because it's free. It's not great, but it's usable for a composer who doesn't have the money to spend on Sibelius or Finale or Dorico.
Well, speaking of Dorico, I will say, I have composed on basically all leading notation softwares, everywhere from the luxury cruise liners, the Sibelius, all that stuff, all the way down to MuseScore. I've used LilyPad very little. I used StaffPad twice, never again. And I've even used the really, really old, this is dating myself, but the 2007 Finale Notepad. Yes. I have used all of it. And I will tell you that the Steinberg creators, the original team that was behind Sibelius, they did something awesome with Dorico here. No, I'm not sponsored by Dorico, even though I tend to evangelize it everywhere I go. But it's a very good reason, though. Because with Dorico, for instance, I can copy the middle 3 notes of a 5 tuplet if I really wanted to. And then I can then paste it across a bar. And it will, by default, split it into, 2 smaller sets of tuplets, but I can choose, through many options, to actually phase over a bar line.
Have you had issues? I know all software does this to an extent. Not just Sibelius. Have you had issues with it glitching very much?
What do you mean?
Not in the sense that it doesn't have a particular feature, but that it has a feature and that doesn't work or is not working like it's supposed to.
There's a few. I had a lot of those in my Finale days in particular because Finale. I'll just say this: Finale is not good for quick work. Finale is good for those who like to work slow. But in Sibelius, my biggest gripes were typically glitch related because I would copy a segment of music, paste it, and then for one reason or another it would crash. And no, it's not a hardware issue because if I could show you my computer right now, I would. I build computers that are beyond incredible in general. Trust me, it's not the computer. With the amount of hardware and the compatibility, it's not that issue, trust me. Especially whenever I can do the same thing across multiple machines. Even the Mac that I used to have at work. Oh, jeez. But, no, I mean, Sibelius just had so many weird little glitches that were in relatively niche areas, but it just seems that from the ground up, Steinberg Dorico, they are working to make sure that these glitches aren't a thing.
Well, and it's of course still being developed and updated.
There's an update every month, just about every month. I think it was either last month or this month. There isn't an actual update, but they've been updating us on what's ahead. But the communication is so on point, and everything they do is so meticulously planned out, and they purposely have held back features from us on purpose, even though they're basically ready to go because it glitches one time out of, every 100 clicks or something. And they make sure it works before they hand it to us. So that's something that for me, because I compose exceptionally fast a lot of the time. Jacob here gets mad at me because he's sitting oh yeah, I did 5 bars of music, and then I'm sitting there alright, I did the first 4 minutes of the bassoon piece, what's next? And he's sitting there sharpening a knife.
I work slow.
Meticulous. Yeah. Yes. But, everybody works at their own pace. But in general, I can't work that fast in Sibelius. But with Dorico, I go guns blazing. I use my keyboard and mouse. I'll use, little tiny MIDI keyboards. I use so many tools just to make my life easier when not just composing in Dorico, but even just, engraving stuff. I mean, it's just the speed I can get with it is absurd, and especially the fact that I've had a problem in the past where I've composed too much to the bar line. But with Dorico, you have the option of composing without bar lines. In fact, that's the default. So
in Sibelius, you cannot. Well, you
can, and I have proven it.
You can, but it's a real pain.
Yeah.
The other thing, see, I get glitches all over Sibelius, but I think the place for me that it's the most irritating because there often is not a way to resolve it is in the playback, which of course is a secondary issue to the actual
I don't say that
mechanics. But I mean, whether or not you're writing in your head, you're writing at the keyboard, you should be able to write without playback. But I've found that a lot of performers nowadays like to have that playback,
even
and you have to spend extra time creating a playback score because you'll write a harmonic in Sibelius and it will not stop sounding even after the note is over.
Yeah, it's the fact that we have to go and make such things as a playback score. It's not good. But what I have found, and this is not just for Sibelius, this is for Dorico and everything, when it comes to special things like harmonics, which, I mean, Dorico's got like halfway implemented right now, so I can't really say, oh, it's king, even though it's gonna be king. But in general, I've found that performers, as long as they can get the shape of the melody, they're happy. Because if they've agreed to play it for you, they really just want that so that they can double-check their pacing, their rhythms, their work. Now, on that subject, though, I will say, Sibelius struggles with complex rhythms. Oh boy, does it struggle with complex rhythms.
Well, and whenever you have a thick texture, playback will glitch, and
though honestly, that part, I will tell you, the thicker texture, that is your computer. That is objectively your computer.
Probably,
yeah.
Yes.
Because like I've run scores that are significantly thicker because I like to think of myself as Mahler sometimes when I write for symphony orchestra. And my computer here, no problem. But again,
I'm working off a laptop for viewers, so it's not going to be as powerful as a desktop as we have over here.
Well, this is like super desktop,
right?
Got two others spread out throughout the house too.
Right. But yeah, the rhythms. It happens that gets it, but it's not exact. It often
like for instance, so it's like a triplet duplet rhythm, like da 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 da, like kind of like switching between like the two eighth notes and then the dotted eighth, and then or hemi demi at the end. So like da 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 da, just something like that. It'll do like da 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 da, and it's like no, come back, no. Like, that frustrated me so much. In fact, I think it was for Galaxy, my what is now my third symphony, my big end of undergrad project. I ended up recording each instrument line individually, and then syncing it all up in, because I didn't know any better yet, Audacity. And I literally just layered it all on top of each other in Audacity.
Audacity isn't that bad.
It's bad. It's really bad.
It's like a Muse score for recording software. I mean, it's
if that. Oh my goodness, it pales. And I'm not even saying that because I enjoy Pro Tools, but because honestly, I would rather use other software. But you use something like Pro Tools or one of the other ones like Studio One, any of that, and you just, man, I wasted so much time doing that. I should have just asked somebody with Pro Tools to do it for me. It would have taken them 5 seconds. Like, it's ridiculous, but I don't know. It's just an interesting thing because these software wars, they seem to be eternal, but I think I finally see an end in sight. I think, despite Finale it was a wonderful piece of software, I think Finale is on the way out.
Well,
I mean,
even you have admitted that for editors, Finale isn't.
Editors is better, which leads me to my next thing. While Finale might be heading out, I think Sibelius is done.
I don't understand. See, however much I complain about Sibelius, how it glitches, but it is functional. I I don't mind using it all of the time. But if I were purchasing a piece of notation software right now, knowing what I know, there's no way I would buy Sibelius.
Right.
There's no reason to. All the developers who really did a good job with the software
They moved over to
and
Dorico.
moved to Dorico, and so now the software is not going anywhere, and the things that are wrong with it are not getting fixed.
Well, and the biggest problem, like for me, is so I work on multiple computers. My two primary computers, my desktop here, and then my Surface Book right here. Totally recommend, by the way. I work on both of those, and the way Avid handles that is licensing. So you have the licensing software. I think you can have Sibelius on like 3 machines or something simultaneously, and their licensing software from Avid is the worst piece of garbage ever. Like, there are times that I will need to use Pro Tools for a piece that I'm writing, like my source bell piece or my garbage piece, whatever, and I will not be able to use Pro Tools at all that day because it's just like, oh, yeah, you need to rebuild your license registry. It's like, I just did this the last 3 times.
You had a whole big issue with this your Sibelius license.
And it was Sibelius in particular, and the reason, apparently, why it's such an issue for me is because I started on 6. Apparently,
Right.
if you started on 7, this was not a problem.
Well, and I've only had I work off my laptop for the most part. I've only had to reset my license once, and it wasn't a problem. But I did start with 7.
Right. And it's a problem. And I think one of the biggest problems is, I mean, and it's honestly, I can't make fun of Avid for this, but it's because they were countering the internet pirates, which, I mean, I can't really damn them for because, you know, I've had to take precautions on my own website and stuff like that to counter it, but, you know, due to people, you know, just stealing the software, basically, they had to step up their game, which, yeah, it worked. It deterred 99% of pirates, but as a result, I'm affected. I cannot enjoy using Sibelius. And right now, it's actually, I believe I don't even use it on, I haven't used it on my laptop at all. The only time I have to use Sibelius these days is to edit an old score or to print parts from an old score and send it to somebody. And for that, it's only on my desktop. I refuse to do it from a laptop because I do not want to deal with the licensing issue.
You could try exporting it into Dorico.
I've done that.
Importing it, exporting it out of Sibelius.
Yeah.
It.
I have.
How does that work? I know how it works. Like how
well does it work?
well does it work? Yes.
A lot better than importing into Sibelius.
Right.
Because Dorico, I'm not sure what they did, but they improved the XML reading significantly. And I think that's just, it's something that I think that they need to capitalize on that because honestly, if they could automate that process, which I can't imagine they wouldn't know how to do that considering that they coded the original Sibelius, I'm just waiting for someone to come up with a converter tool that allows you to, in Dorico, open a .sib file. And at that point, there's literally no reason.
Just for the sake of our viewers, who some of them might be considering switching while they're in the middle of a project, how much time of extra work has it taken you per score to import?
There was one piece that I actually transferred into Dorico. Because for the most part, I did a dovetail thing, like, you know, I finished my Sibelius project side by side with starting Dorico projects, all while teaching a finale class. Don't do that. Again, I'm good at notation software, thank goodness. But basically, the one that I did for was my Polyphony, the Complete Works.
Right.
Well, it wasn't the Complete Works yet, it was just the one score. So what I was doing was I imported it into Dorico, and the one thing that doesn't transfer 100% of the time with XML format is Dynamics.
Right.
But Dynamics, easy enough, especially in Dorico, because it's very intelligent, and if it detects, oh, the dynamics have been similar between these two parts for the last 8 bars, odds are the dynamics will be the same next, and it'll assume that. But if you break the trend, it'll stop doing that until you do it again. So I would say overall, and that's a very massive, you've seen a very complex score, I would say an hour and a half.
No,
That's what it took
that's
me to convert it.
not very long. Yeah.
It's not really. No, granted, I'm very well versed in notation software, and I'm able to debug things really fast, and I'm able to like code really fast. I can do all that stuff really fast. So I would say, on average, for the average piece of music, I would say dedicate an hour, maybe 2 hours, to fully importing into Dorical from Sibelius, and honestly, it's an investment well made. And they just extended again their crossgrade offer. So you can get it for a competitive crossgrade, and they even have an educational crossgrade discount.
Does Doric do they offer? I was thinking for maybe our viewers who don't trust the import function, they could use something like Sibelius's music scanning software to scan your printed out Sibelius scores into Doric.
Oh my lord, they don't have that for Dorico. But honestly, PDF scanning into notation software has never been great.
I'm joking, by the way. Please,
Yeah.
Please don't do that. I wouldn't want anyone to go through that hell because
As someone who has done that professionally as an engraver, where I had to take an old score from certain professors that we both know, and I've had to scan them in, and they're weird old handwritten Baroque style scores. Man, Sibelius did not know how to process that. Honestly, Finale didn't either.
I tried scanning stuff in, and then gave up and did it all by hand because it just wasn't
faster.
It is
Because otherwise, you got to go back and got to fix all the duplets, triplets, all that stuff.
I'm not even as fast as a writer or as fast. Zach's a tech guy. I'm not as fast with software as he is, but for me, it was faster. And yeah.
Well, let us know what you think. I mean, are you fond of one of the notation softwares? Do you severely disagree with one of the criticisms we've made or one of the praises we've given?
Argue with us in the comments.
Yeah, be sure to argue with us. We'll be glad to hear you out. But that concludes our first show. I think
so.
Yeah,
yes.
be sure to join us. I think we're going to try and do this again maybe next week or
I believe
sometime.
the plan is weekly at 2 o'clock on Wednesdays.
Yeah, weekly
yes.
2 o'clock on Wednesdays. And if you don't catch the live versions, we're going to keep them archived. We'll have an official slash code at some point, but for now, just the channel that you're viewing this on.
And if you enjoyed the show, like, subscribe. There'll be more from us in the future. So
yeah, be sure to do that so you don't miss anything. And for now, we are signing off. Peace out.
See you later.